Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to episode 18 of the Convo podcast. This episode, inshallah, is on the topic of Islam on the back of the youth. And we just want to talk about young people, partly because we've all moved past that age where we can call ourselves young people, and now we can look back and talk about young people.
Speak for yourself, buddy. I'm still young.
So, inshallah, in today's episode, we have joining us Sheikh Abdullah Hakim, who my co-host Hamza Qureshi will introduce very shortly. And I guess we'll see you on the other side of this intro video. No, wait, we already had the intro video, didn't we? Hamza, off to introducing Sheikh Abdullah Hakim.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, everyone. So we've got Sheikh Abdullah Hakim with us today. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for coming on. He is the head of Islamic Studies at the illustrious and prestigious Western Grammar School. And he is also active in the Muslim community, active with youth around the 𝗬𝗂𝗵𝗵 area, Mount Druitt and so forth, and also involved with Mercy Mission. So mashallah, a very accomplished young man. I use the word young deliberately because that's apparently what we're talking about today. And I like to consider the three of us young people. I don't know about Sufyan. He seems to think that he's a little over the hill now.
Wait,
I feel like we're still fairly young.
Wait, I think I got two things wrong. One, if you're cool with me being considered a young person, I'm going to jump back in that wagon. And secondly, here's the introduction video. All right, so back to introduction, Sheikh. We've told our audience a little bit about us, a little bit about yourself as a teacher at Western Grammar School, as a head of the Islamic Studies department. Maybe before we get started, I know that there's a certain subsection of the community, the outer west, 𝗬𝗂𝗵𝗵 𝗔𝗯𝗴, which is, around about where you live. That section of the community probably knows you well, and I imagine some of the other parts of the community where you have had some Islamic activism. But for anyone else in the Muslim community, maybe a little bit more about yourself or what your activities are in the Muslim community, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli amma ba'd. First of all, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah khair for having me on. Alhamdulillah. I know usually we sit down together, I believe, but alhamdulillah, like due to COVID, we are doing this online, which is alhamdulillah. This is the way we are at the moment, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the situation that we are in currently. Well, my name is Abdullah Hakim, and my background, I was born in Fiji, but raised here in Australia. Alhamdulillah, I had the chance to go to Malaysia to do my studies, Islamic studies there in the International Islamic University of Malaysia. And I spent approximately 6 years there, studied the Arabic language, and I majored in fiqh and usul al-fiqh, also history and civilization. Alhamdulillah, I got back and I did enter Mercy Mission. Mercy Mission, the founder of that is Sheikh 𝗀𝗀𝗵. The headquarters is in Malaysia. So alhamdulillah, I did a lot of, I ran a lot of courses there, in terms of, salah, in terms of marriage, the youth and so on and so forth. Alhamdulillah, we have a branch here in Sydney as well. I also started teaching, at, I think 2013, I believe it was, or 2014 in Western Grammar School. And yes, as the brother said, I'm currently the HOD of the Islamic department.
Fantastic. So being at a school, naturally, you would have extensive exposure to young people. And so I guess we can just start off by asking, what are some of the sort of the key issues, the key problems that you've identified young people are facing nowadays? Because there's just so much that bombards them from the whole of society, from their own friends, from family, everywhere. What are they facing? What are the issues?
Well, it's a very
Huge, yeah.
There's a lot of problems the youth are facing, and the youth that I deal with now, we got to remember the area that I'm from. A lot of the people, or a lot of the youth where I'm from, they're from the subcontinent background.
Yep.
So you could see this difference between the subcontinent background people and also those from the Arab, Arab side as well. There's a lot of difference. However, generally speaking, a lot of the youth grew up in this society. So it's not so much the background, although it does play a role, but it is also just generally growing up in this society. So as you said, the friends that they hang around with, the schools that they go to, what they are exposed to on a daily basis, social media, the computer in general, their phones, all of these things, huge impact on their day-to-day activities. And if you're talking about the dangers itself, I guess when you look at what they are exposed to, online especially, and especially amongst their friends, you see that the certain topics that people are talking about, the things that are exposed to online, such as the normality of even pornography, as an example. You could talk about things such as talks a lot about materialism, things about myself. It's all about me, self-centered topics. Disregarding the community, disregarding the elders, the disrespect to the elders. There's so many things. Gender segregation as well is another big issue amongst the youth. So there's a lot of things that we can list, but we need to really.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you. Can I ask? I feel like the vast majority of those problems are also problems for older people. Like when we say young people, I'm guessing we're referring to, say, like, I don't know, let's say early high school up until when they start to enter the workforce, maybe something like that.
Around then, you could imagine.
So that would be like, say, 12 to about 24, 25, something like that. Yeah. I feel like if you look at the next 10 to 15 years, 25 to say 40-year-olds, although they might be able to maybe a little bit better equipped to deal with it, what would you say? Are older people still dealing with the same problems, like overuse of technology or some of the other like relationship problems? Is it how would you identify young people as standing out when it comes to facing these problems in society?
You're right. You're absolutely right. When it comes to even the older generation, like I was speaking to my father just a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me that even when he was growing up, see, in his society, one of the dangers that they faced was lack of Islamic knowledge. Simply because, now remember where we're from. We're from Fiji, right? So in Fiji, they didn't have a lot of Islamic books there, at that time, and the only knowledge that they had was what their parents told them, and what their parents knew about Islam was simply based on just, things that they heard from people. So you can say the dangers during their time was just lack of Islamic knowledge and mixing Islam with other cultures or other religions, that they didn't really know that. So you're right, when it comes to dangers, even the elder generation, when they were growing up, they were also facing it. Today, there are dangers that the older generation face. You're right. In terms of technology, people are now so much indulged in technology, even older generation, where they are forgetting their role as parents, they are forgetting their role as teachers, as leaders of the community. And again, that has a huge impact on the youth because they're no longer looking up to the older generation anymore. So there's obviously a huge gap between the two, and there's definitely a lot of problems with it.
Just to chime into that, I reckon, Sufyan, you can say there's some commonality, some overlap, but I think it's just bleedingly obvious that the younger generation, they have a unique extent of that. Like if you look at it as a question of degrees, then the younger generation face it far more potently than those who might be older. So you were saying, say, 25 to 40-year-olds or whatever it is. Yes, certainly they'd have some of the issues. They'd have access to the same kind of things. They'd have the same kind of influences, but not to the same degree that young people have. And young people are just so much more easily influenced as well. They haven't formed their own identities. And so these influences end up being, rather than just sort of peripheral influences, they become formative influences. And that, I think, has huge impacts.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the, I don't want to have a to and fro on that for too long, because I agree with you. There's differences on that. Sheikh, what's your take on, we need to get the terminology of this right, and I suppose I had a really good point in telling Hamza that we need to get the terminology right. But,
great point.
Hold on. Do you consider yourself youth?
I do. Sufyan said he doesn't. So I don't know.
Shabab?
Shabab in Arabic, if you want to go down that line, I'm guessing that's like 40-year-old.
Yeah. That's what it is, isn't it?
See, listen.
All right, so Sheikh is broadening the definition to include himself.
You got to understand something, right? Listen, I've always considered Shabab, initially, until the age of 33, right? But since I'm 33, I've now changed my view to 40.
Is that a valid reasoning to change an opinion?
There are different opinions. You can always take that opinion, right? But look, you're right. Shabab, as Sufyan mentioned, a lot of the ulama, they say until the age of 40. So we are all, alhamdulillah, considered Shabab.
Alhamdulillah. Let's see what happens when we get to 41.
I know. Let's see if there's another opinion out there.
Hey, look, I haven't actually played with the tech side, but Hamza, and I guess our tech guy who's quietly just sitting there, lurking but not saying anything, very creepily. If I share my screen to play a video, can I actually can I test that without ruining everything? All right, let's see how we go.
What do you want to share though?
Let's be very careful about what I share. Hang on, give me 1 sec. I'm going to play this video here. Just give me 1 sec. It's about millennials. And then I want to ask a question about it. Okay. The host has disabled participant screen sharing. Thank you, host. Anyway, let's get back to that. So the host can work on that. And then let me just quickly summarize. So there's differences on how people define it. Apparently, strictly speaking, millennials are anyone who's born after 1984. You've got your Gen Z who was born a little bit after that. Let's just work with people who are younger than us. Apparently, we're talking about people other than us, right? Because we don't have these problems. But let's talk about young people in the way that I defined it earlier, early high school to people who are about to. I also very conveniently defined it in that way because we've entered the workforce. But anyway, it is said about Gen Z, that millennials, that they share certain qualities and characteristics, that they lack commitment, that they are a little bit sort of inward looking in the sense that they're self-entitled, that they may be obsessed with technology a little bit too much compared to, and you can see why, because technology developed in their times a lot more than it did, I suppose in ours, or to go even way further back in yours. And they're 2 years back, but they're also anxiety ridden, so a bit more anxious.
Yeah.
What do you think about these qualities that have been supposedly been given to an entire class of people, and do you agree with those character traits?
Look, I think a big issue, and this is something that I've dealt with the youth. SubhanAllah, we do a lot of counseling sessions at school, and this is something that they bring up. You see, the youth, when they see things online or the trends online, it really gives them that anxiety, that, I'm not like that, or I'm not that perfect. Like for example, they see someone who has a nice body, for example, online, and then they look at themselves in the mirror and they think, my God, I'm not like this. So they go through a lot of depression, and anxiety does come up. They see everything online. You can say majority of the things on social media that people post. You got to understand that it's not, or the youth need to understand that it's not always real. It's not always what it seems.
It's filtered, it's made up.
Yeah. Like, someone taking a photo of themselves and putting it up there, right? They probably had to take 20 photos and pick the best one. And when they pick the best one and they put it up there, they think other people see that and like, wow, that's flawless. A couple, for example, they may be going through so much in their home, to and fro, maybe, a lot of marital problems, but online they show as if they are madly in love, as an example. So when people see their lives, it gives them that depression, that anxiety. You're absolutely right. So it does play a massive role. And we need to be very careful in the way we use social media. We use these platforms because, to be honest, like we all have social media, and we all need to be tech savvy. I mean, look at us today. We are using technology in order to speak. And the way the times are going. So we definitely need to be tech savvy and know about social media. But the way we use it and the way we need to teach our youth to use it is very important. So we need to let them know, don't believe everything that you see. Don't think everything is perfect, because there's really no such thing as perfection except paradise. It's paradise that we are longing for. So this world is temporary, and that's something that we need to definitely let our youth know.
Sheikh, I want to just interrogate or poke a potential hole in something you mentioned. Like, I don't want to at all belittle the reality of mental health issues. They are a very serious concern, particularly amongst young people. In fact, the leading cause of death for young people is suicide. And I think that is horrifying, and it speaks so much about the issue of mental health amongst young people. But without belittling it, so that's the disclaimer, what can we say about how much of it is sort of legitimate anxiety, depression, mental health concern, and how much of it is a lack of resilience or fortitude? Because some people say, and I can sometimes sympathize with this, that young people are really soft nowadays. Like, they don't experience failure, they don't experience difficulty, they're very shielded and padded, and they're raised in this kind of generation where parents don't want them to experience hardships or difficulties. And then suddenly something comes along and they just have this anxiety and depression. They don't know how to deal with things. What can we say? Like, how can we balance that lack of resilience and fortitude versus legitimate sort of mental health concerns and anxieties?
Yeah, look, that's a fair point. And you're absolutely right. There is, when it comes to mental health, it's a big thing. And I think there's a lot of work that is done in this area. And subhanAllah, we've got a lot of Muslims in this area that are, teaching and informing the youth and also the elder generation about its reality. However, you're right. Look, we can't really put a number to it. That how much can we, how can we say is it real anxiety or real depression or something that is like, I think if you want to sort of see if we have to say is a society to blame as part of blame because of that, I would say there is a partial blame in that, definitely. You're right. When we grew up and when I was younger, we couldn't have everything that we wanted. And subhanAllah, when we wanted something, we had to have a lot of patience for it. We had to really strive for it. And our parents grew up. They raised us in a difficult manner. My parents, for example, my father was the only one working. My mom was at home, looking after us, and there wasn't a lot of money. So we did go through hardship, and I'm sure our parents went through hardship.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
A lot of the generation that are growing up today, they have everything. And I think, subhanAllah, if you look at it this way, everything today is on demand, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, remember how when we were growing up and we wanted to, let's say, watch something on TV, right? And we saw an ad that says, hey, this movie is coming up next week on Channel 9 at this certain time.
And you sit and you wait for it and you want to watch that, yeah.
Yeah, we waited for it, we sat down as a family, we watched it, and yeah, so even gaining knowledge, for example, like at our time, I remember when I was in primary school, I feel old when I say our time, but when I was in primary school, we didn't have the internet initially. So what our parents had to do, if we had an assignment, we would actually make a trip and go to the library.
Yeah,
we would go to the library, we would sit down, we get all the books, parents helped out as well. It was an entire journey, right? So when we went through that hardship, I guess we gave more importance and more value to it, right? So when we did suffer a certain failure, we would have the patience, we would have the resilience, and we push further. Not saying that in our generation, no one had anxiety or no one had mental health issues. We did. But I guess it is on the rise, because today, if someone, generally speaking again, if someone doesn't get something on demand, or they can't find something, then all of a sudden, and I've seen a few cases with this, they go through that depression. When they fail a subject, they go through that depression. But I think now we need to equip the youth about resilience, talk about resilience, and give them those tools of how to jump back up again. So yeah, look, again, I can't put a number to it, but definitely there are.
It's a very delicate balance, because on the one side, you don't want to devalue very serious and legitimate issues, but on the other hand, you don't want to sort of simplify it where you just say, okay, well, we just need to address that and not look at the fact that we need to build resilience and things like that.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I was gonna show that video, and I think our tech guy sorted it out and given us the option of sharing videos and stuff. But I'm just gonna leave it for now because we've sort of moved the discussion on. I do want to look at the next sort of issue and just trying to explore this one a little bit. We've spoken about processes and sort of how much is an individual to quote unquote blame, and it's not even about pointing the finger of blame. It's just trying to understand the issue in a better way. And how much is perhaps the uncontrolled or external factors within society to blame. In terms of maybe counterbalancing it a little bit, which is another reason why I didn't want to show that video, because the video is just going to go back to saying young people, narcissistic, self-entitled, But let's just assume, okay, we've heard all of that. Is it perhaps the case that we belittle young people too much? Like, because there is that opinion out there, and voices like Hamza's are just amplified, just shouting, just shutting young people like me down all the time.
Like you.
I'm joking. No, but some voices, right, in position of authority, and sometimes with absolute and utmost due respect to khatibs, for example, but sometimes it comes from people in those positions of authority, people on the pulpits, giving sermons, shutting down young people, cancelling them, to borrow the language of young people to show that they can. And it's sometimes like in that sort of a context. What do you think? Do we gloss over the positives of young people? Do we not look at the positives enough? Do we perhaps just gloss over it, and do we not give it enough attention? Do we belittle young people too much?
Okay, so I think looking at the elder generation and how they see the younger generation, I think there's a big gap. Something that we've done in our school, for example, we've got a welfare department, and in the welfare department, we wanted to analyze the relationship of children or students and their parents, and we've noticed that there's a huge gap, massive gap. See, a lot of the youth, they grew up in this society, right? And their parents have grown up in another country. Yeah. So what the elders see is from their perspective, is from what they know from their country. And the youth are growing up in this society only knowing what they see around them. So there's a huge gap. So what the elder generation, they generally do is they will say, for example, the youth, they're very immature. They don't know how to, respect the elders. They don't know how to, deal with issues and problems. Whereas the younger generation, they will say, hey, the older generation are, too old. They, their time is out. They're expired.
They're out of touch.
They're out of touch. They don't know what we're going through. So there's definitely a huge gap. So you're right in saying that. And I want even the youth, and they can probably agree with what I'm saying. When it comes to mashaykhs, and I'm subhanAllah, I respect every single one of them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of them. But I want you to now think from the perspective of the younger generation. Imagine, and obviously this is quite real, it happens every time, but the younger people, we want them to be learning Islam and learning Deen, right? So they go to the masjid and they're like, all right, I'm going to learn Islam. They go to the masjid, and then in front of them, with all respect to the mashaykhs that we have, they will see a shaykh a big belly, very elderly person, and they are speaking in another language, or they are speaking very broken English. There's no connection. That connection is not there. And that is why you see that the youth have drifted away from the elder generation. They've drifted away from the elder mashaykhs, and they are now on their own, and they're trying to learn Islam on their own without much of a guidance. So that's why there's that gap needs to be bridged. That gap needs to be closed. And that's something that, alhamdulillah, we've noticed that we're trying to work on the youth that we have around us. But that is a real issue. And I want to give you an example.
Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to give you an example on what I remember when I was growing up. And I had the same
many years ago,
Many years ago, right? When I was growing up, I remember, I had the same issue. I couldn't connect with the imam. I couldn't connect with the elder people who were teaching me. So what happened was and some of you probably remember this. There was a center that opened up in Liverpool. It was called the JRYC.
Yep.
And that attracted the youth so much. The sheikh who was part of that organization, the guy was built. He was a tank, right? And he was young himself. He spoke Aussie. And when I say Aussie, I mean the English that people are growing up in today.
True blue Aussie.
He spoke that. And just the way his demeanor was with the youth, it attracted them. Man, that masjid was always full. And another thing he did was, one of the first things he did, or the organization did, was they put a gym in the masjid, right?
Gym?
A gym in the masjid.
Not gin.
Oh, if that happens, oh my God.
I thought you meant that. That's the kind of thrill that young people like. So they
maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should
it became a horror story kind of thing.
Hey, look at what we're doing with the gym. No, but honestly, that attracted them. And then not just that, there would be I'll give you some examples. There'll be mini soccer tournaments, wrestling, that was happening in the masjid. Can you imagine today in a masjid, right?
Imagine 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗵 mosque doing that.
Yeah, or any masjid
in the middle of that, yeah.
My goodness, they'll be shouting and screaming, and there'll be, the youth will be kicked out. So that's the gap that I'm talking about. There's a huge gap, and we need to bridge that. The elder generation needs to understand the younger generation, and definitely we need to help and support them and come up with solutions that they like, and that attract them to help them understand Deen. I think that's very important.
I think it's also really important to recognize that I don't think either side on that divide is wrong. When you look at the older generation who have come from their migrant background and they say, younger people are immature, they lack responsibility, blah, blah, blah. Arguably, they're not wrong. But when the young people turn back and say, well, you guys don't understand our reality, you haven't lived here, they're also not wrong. And I think it just becomes like a communication equation. How can you best get them to realize both viewpoints and then come to some kind of understanding? I did have a question coming out of that, though. What about the next generation? Let's say us, for example, right? Yeah. Young people like us, alhamdulillah, with our children, we've all got kids, right, who are going to grow up in that same society. Do you think that equation is going to change then? Do you think that plays a role?
To be honest, I'm speaking for myself here. I think, again, different people will have different understanding of this, but because I'm heavily involved in the youth, and a lot of us, we sort of have a sense of understanding of what our children are growing up in, because we've tasted that, we've tasted, pieces of that. I guess I know it's still different from how we grew up, but we know that the society is still the same. Bits and pieces are changing here and there. But in comparison to our parents or grandparents and where they came from, that's a huge difference. That's from another country. Yeah. This is us. We've understand the way they're growing up, how we grew up, and the way our kids are growing up. And I think that there could be more connection. And you probably heard a lot of people, and I don't know if you probably said it or I've said it, but we probably said that, you know what, I'm not going to do that with my kid. Yeah. So
I'd have a closer connection and everything. Yep.
Yeah, correct. Because the way we grew up, for example, we couldn't really connect with our parents at some areas, but now that we have kids, we're like, you know what? I'm gonna make sure that the way we raise our kids, we're gonna be involved. Although not always that's true. I guess it's the way we can bridge that is, number one, understanding. We need to understand. And that's something, subhanAllah, we recognize in our school, and we're doing that for parents. We're doing something called the Parenting Development Program, where we are calling in parents and we are trying to make them understand the realities of what the youth are facing and give them the direction, the tools to help them bridge that gap and to be more involved in their child's life. And I think that's very, very important.
Sheikh, can we do some role play? I'm going to call in as the young person, obviously, and either one of you could go as the older person. We'll just do some role play, okay? So I'm going to call in, ring, ring, and you pick up. So I'm someone who's listening to your show. Hi, Sheikh Abdullah. Fantastic show.
Where's my phone? Oh, I'm using
Yeah, so that's what I was going to talk about. You guys are coming across as like understanding young people, but see, you didn't even know you're using your phone. I don't think you're as tech savvy as you guys think. So anyway, my question is...
Thanks to start it off on that note, but continue.
My question is, Sheikh, and the other guy on your show as well, that like I feel like you guys are sitting here talking about young people, but I don't think you understand us. I think that you don't understand what we go through. And also you people are very boring. Like whether it's school, whether it's khutbahs, I feel like you don't talk about our issues and you're just really boring. I can't concentrate on you guys are really technical. I don't understand what your language, like, why do you talk like that anyway? Anyway, my question is, I come across as such a good young person. Anyway.
Meaning you're incoherent?
No, I don't.
I'm joking.
He doesn't understand that. He's young.
My question is, I feel like we don't understand each other. We're just too different. And you people are living on another planet in terms of your language, in terms of your problems. We go through so many other problems in terms of relationships and drugs and violence and sex and relationships with other people and obviously the other gender. But you don't understand this stuff. So what do you have to say about that? End of phone call.
Wait, I'm still talking to you. You still have to hold the phone, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Good point.
Yeah.
Who's the one who's not tech savvy now?
Okay, I totally understand what you're going through. I've got kids of my own, and very similar situations and scenarios that you're mentioning. But can I ask you, what are some of the problems that you specifically, if you can point out 2 or 3 things, what are you facing? Yeah.
Sorry, what was that again?
Okay, let me say a bit more clear. Maybe it's my accent, so I'll try to change my accent just to make you understand.
Condescending, but yeah, go on.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you so that I can understand you a little bit better. Name me 3 things that you believe that you are facing that the elder generation can't understand.
Look, I feel like you guys had better role models. So people who are role models for you guys were like champions, whereas we're stuck with you people as our role models. So that's number 1. Secondly, I feel that the whole education thing is just become a bit of a joke. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it's your fault or anything. I'm just saying that maybe with the way technology has moved, it's not like we tried to become addicted to phones. That's how addiction works. It's just piecemeal. It's just bit by bit. So everyone got addicted to smartphones. You guys didn't go through those problems. Anyway, so because of that, we're not so interested in technology, and I don't think schools have been able to keep up with technology because, we're still reading from old textbooks and my teacher still uses overhead projectors. Anyway, and then thirdly, we have a lot of relationship problems that I think maybe, again, your parents were able to manage, but then now we live in like the next generation of Westerners growing up as Muslims in the West, and we have more relationship dramas and stuff. So those are 3 things: education, relationship, and I forgot the first one because of the education point.
Hamza, you wanna go ahead first?
Okay. Jazakallah khair. Thank you, young person. I appreciate the call. But look, I'd say that I don't think it's as different as you imagine. Smartphones and things, they emerged in our time. You inherited the outcome. We were there when they began. And so we got that influence. I remember in year 9, I got my first smartphone, or year 10 or something like that, right? And so we had that. We had that when I was your age, you know, your metaphorical age or whatever it was, right? We had that at our disposal. It's not like in that time there wasn't the opposite gender there either. We had that as well. And then your first point, let me try and recall, was... I can't quite recall.
Role models.
Role models, yes. Look, our role models were actually very, very different. We had role models who, like, if we're talking as young Muslims, we didn't even have role models who grew up here. We had role models who were from overseas, who were, as Sheikh Abdullah mentioned, weren't from around here. They didn't speak the language. They didn't connect with us. So we were arguably more disconnected from our role models than you are now from yours.
Sorry, can I just hear from the speaker as well? Because frankly, you're very condescending with your tone. No, I'm joking. It was a great response. Can I hear from the young person, the old person as well?
Oh, no, I'll take the young person now. Yeah, he's absolutely right. We also went through all of that, you know. As you said about gender interaction, as an example, you know, we also had that as we were growing up. And you probably have no idea, but, you know, our grandparents' generation, they had, for example, affairs that we don't know about, you know, but they've had them. Unfortunately, they've had them. Today, the issue is we put everything up online that everyone knows about what we've done. So my best suggestion to you is that when you're going through this hardship, always remember that there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? There is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who loves you. You may not be able to connect with the elders. There is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who loves you. Allah is the one who has guided you, that you are first of all Muslim. That is a huge gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fact that you are a Muslim entails that you are towards the path of paradise. Now your job is to honor that commitment and to understand what Allah wants from you. You know, you may not be able to connect with your parents or your elder generation, but hey, the best role model, as the first point that you mentioned, is not us. It's the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's the Sahabas. They are the greatest role models. So all I'm asking you is to read their seerah, read about what they went through, because trust me, a lot of things that you are going through today, they've gone through it. And there are solutions out there. So we all love stories. And one of the biggest or the best things to solve these issues is read about their stories. Read about what they went through and how they resolved their problems. And I'm sure, inshallah, you're going to find solutions for yourself.
That was actually really good. If I'm going to move away from the role model, the role play for a little bit, good answers. I think, like, honest answers. I mean, in the real world, I'd probably not have the intellectual stamina of a duck, but, you know, like, we'd be able to push back on a few questions and stuff. But it was good. Can I just quickly try and show my video, because I've been trying to show it for so long. But now I'm actually going to try and show a different one this time. And let's see what you guys think of in terms of your thoughts on the video. How do I...
Maybe unmute it as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to try. Tell me if you can hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really critical issues. Backwardness, poverty, illiteracy, extremism and radicalism, lack of education.
Of course there is hope, but the main important thing is first we need to stay positive and we need to work hard. Each one of us needs to be the best in his field.
Muslim world needs to focus more on productivity than thinking and blaming others for our own shortcomings.
I think the best way to teach to a baby or to a toddler is not to dictate something, but to be a good representative, to be a good role model.
We are all different. We are all living in different situations, in different countries. You don't need to be like someone to make an impact. You just need to be ourselves.
There are solutions, and solutions all belong to how we create a plan, a comprehensive, pragmatic plan today for our future.
We must be united. If we really united, we can achieve all these goals. We have to live together. We have to unify our voices, and we have to act as a one body, one soul, and one heart, but by saving and keeping our colors and our differences. The future of the Muslims is very bright, but for us to achieve this, our governments all the Muslim communities, we must invest in our youth. Alhamdulillah, I'm witnessing that. There are very hopeful attempts and interventions. Inshallah, I'm hoping that in the end, we will witness to a great generation which is leading to make the world happier and a very better place.
The only thing that can ensure the bright future for Muslim world is to trust their people, trust their youth.
The youth are the leaders of tomorrow.
Okay, so just to get back to that, okay, am I back now? Can we still hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So just to get back to that, now that video is a TRT video. It's about a slightly different topic, which is more about young people in the Muslim world.
Muslim youth are
So,
worried,
hang on, give me one sec.
based on an article written by 𝗬𝗫𝗵𝗵.
Sorry, one sec. Just going to pause that. So just to get back to that, there are some important points that I felt that video was covering that we can perhaps talk. And the reason I brought that up is because I want to connect it to the actual topic of tonight's podcast, which is Islam on the back of youth. So we wanted to talk about young people, some of the challenges they're facing, some of the disconnection that may exist there, but then also try and link that to, you know, that point that you made about the Global Islamic Youth Center, GIYC, and how it got packed out because you had people who were marrying the idea of being young and being able to converse with young people, but also have the sacred knowledge, right, and that experience, and then bring that together to create a sense of activism within the community. Can you just maybe talk to us a little bit about like combining those two things, like young people assuming their role and their responsibilities as young Muslims growing up in the West?
Yep. Inshallah. So I think that's a very, first of all, that video was amazing. And you're right. The youth are going to be the next leaders of the Islamic world. I think one thing I remember, I was listening to, or I read a quote from, the 𝗬𝗵𝗵𝗵. He said that non-Muslims they don't read the Quran, they don't read the Hadith, but they read you. So be the best ambassador of Islam you can be. And I thought that was really amazing. So that's a point that I was highlighting to the youth that I'm talking to. And I said the one thing that you need to remember, you have a gift that nobody else has, and that is Islam. So I want the youth to understand this gift, that you have Islam in you, and we are responsible. So we need to teach them responsibility of this gift. We need to teach them what it means to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. They need to understand Allah, who Allah is, and why we are here. So these are the things that we need to work with them, I think.
And like some of those big overarching objectives will actually help direct them a lot better. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, that's correct. They need to focus on their gifts that Allah has given them, I believe. Because see, what's happening is the youth are growing up here, right? They want to fit in. They want to fit into the society. So they feel left out. So we need to teach them that, yes, as the Prophet ﷺ said, Islam came as something strange and it will leave as something strange. فَطُوبَى لِغُرَبَاء. Give glad tidings to the strangers, right? So in rather than following the trend, set the trend. That's important. And I'll give you an example. I think, and I've mentioned these examples before, and when I speak to the youth, when I went to Plumpton High School, right? And I did my high school, I did my high school there for 4 years. And, all of us, we wanted to fit in. We feel very left out, and especially after September 11, you always feel like, I'm in the corner, no one wants to, talk to me.
By the way, just a quick point on September 11. Nowadays, I'm so startled when you mention it to a young person. They're like, what happened then?
I know.
Oh, my goodness me.
I said that to my class. I'm like, where were you guys when September 11 happened? And they're like, so we weren't even born. Like, oh my God. No, you're right. But look, it's subhanAllah, like we wanted to fit in. So we didn't want to show Islam. We would hide and make wudu. We would hide and pray Dhuhr prayer, things like that. But there was one brother, subhanAllah, one student, his name was Imran. The guy, he was so proud to be a Muslim. So proud. And he would come to school in front of everybody. And very loudly he would say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Like very loudly. And then he would come and he would give us a hug. He would try to use all these Arabic words, كيف حالكم, alhamdulillah, even though some of them were wrong. But he did it because he loved Islam and he had that pride of being a Muslim, right? So what would happen is, slowly, the non-Muslim students would see how happy the guy is. And he would see how we get together, we're always, in the playground together. Like, it was such a strong connection that they actually came to us and they were like, first of all, what is that thing he's saying, Assalamu alaikum? What does it mean? And I said, it means peace be upon you. And he's like, but the guy is Indonesian, you're Fijian. Like, how do you guys connect? And then we started talking about Islam. It's Islam that connects us. And when they saw that, subhanAllah, without kidding you, amongst the group that we had, 3 of the students converted to Islam. So what I'm saying is, the youth need to understand the gift of Islam and love it and have pride over it, and they can set the trend.
Especially because what they face today from the media and being sort of marginalized the way we are, from politicians and media and general narrative out there in society, is it puts you on the back foot.
Right.
You feel like, should I do this? Should I make wudu in public? Should I say this? Should I talk like this? But, you make a really good point. If you just go out there without being like obtrusive, but if you just go out there and be yourself and express yourself, like in the end, the hearts are in the hands of Allah. So, subhanAllah.
And, I think we've got such an important role to play in that regard as well. Like I'm talking about, I won't say old, but the not so young, right? Not as young. Because if we are on the front foot and if we are confident and if we can channel that confidence to our youth, then inshallah that's what can empower them. And I feel like something like even just as simple as our language towards the youth, rather than trying to push them down for their shortcomings, try to lift them through their shortcomings and try to better them and try to encourage them. And I think that plays such a critical role. And I think both of you guys sort of alluded to it as well. Often they go to a khutbah and they just hear about how bad they and Muslims generally are. And that gives very little motivation to them to actually improve and to grow and to be better. And I think we need to really pull our socks up to help pull them up, inshallah. I think it's critical.
Just on that, if you want to add maybe as like a final note, just in terms of the role that we have, or that I suppose, like if you were to address different subsets of society, young people, the not so young people, and perhaps the older generation, with respect to our responsibilities to the younger generation, because they are our tomorrow after all, what would you say as a final sort of note to wrap up the podcast?
Look, I would say that we need to understand them. We need to work with them. We need to find their positives, work with their positives. Yes, if they have negatives, we can help them in that regard, but find their positives and use that strength to make them or give them that motivation to become, great ambassadors of Islam. I think that's very, very vital. And once we understand them, then we need to set activities or set, programs that they would want to attend or want to come and learn from. And inshallah ta'ala, you would see a gradual change. I think that's important. Because if we always disregard them, and that's why I say society, there is a society to blame. Parents, we can blame them in some way or the other. But at the same time, if we change that mindset and we're like, you know what, they are the leaders of tomorrow. Let's look at what they are good at. Let's give them the tools of, becoming great ambassadors and be with them, inshallah. I think that will give a lot of motivation and be, I guess, proud of what you have and the gifts from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that when the youth see that, they will appreciate it, that they are doing something for us, and they will try their best to, motivate themselves and, of course, others around them. And inshallah, we'll see that change. And I'm sure we've seen that change slowly. We're seeing it already. It's happening. And we just need to push it further, inshallah, and enjoy the future.
Inshallah.
A lot of what you're saying is focusing on positivity, like in terms of young people having a positive outlook, and then older people sort of looking at the positives in young people, having a positive outlook, a growth mindset, positive outlook. So that's really good. It's something to take away for our audience as well. We'll leave it there, inshallah. We have gone a little bit longer than we normally do, but I think the conversation was really nice as well. It was actually really nice to have you guys in my study room like this on a Monday evening. And I quite like the model of doing this online.
Yeah, I think it worked pretty well.
It gives you the ability to share videos. I know I'm obsessing over that a little bit, but as opposed to having to download and then
or make your own videos and things.
Or make your own video 15 minutes before the podcast starts and send it to your tech guy, and it's just so much better. Anyway, let's fully exploit technology like young. Let's.
It didn't work apparently. Sorry to burst your bubble, bro.
We just sat there quietly for what was that, 1.5 minutes? Anyway. And maybe our tech people can shove the video in afterwards. See how we go. Sheikh, we'll end it there.
Sheikh. It was an absolute pleasure. It was fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I didn't like a bit of the petulance of our fake young person, Sufyan,
like
though. It was a bit annoying at times.
Young people don't understand.
I gotta say.
I'm going to look that one up, okay?
Hey, he did a good job. No, not bad.
I think he was just being more of himself than usual, to be honest.
As he was doing it, I'm like, that's probably come from Sufyan directly.
This is like, is
He's
this
not really
role play?
acting.
You couldn't tell if that was the role play or the earlier one. All right.
Sheikh, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for an insightful discussion. And yeah, I think we can leave it at that. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum.